Chapter 23. Welcome Home. Sue's head pounded and her stomach churned as the light worked its way through the cracks in her eyelids. She shivered, feeling the drops of icy water running off her body. Her arms and legs stretched off to each side of her body, unmovable. A hard metal bed drove the cold of the room into her bones. As she forced her eyes open, the horror of her situation revealed itself. One look confirmed the bonds holding her fast and her nudity. The windowless room a sterile light, like the transport truck that brought her here. Several shower heads dripped liquid from overhead, along with others lining the walls. Sue wanted to scream, but feared who would respond if she did. A tear rolled down her cheek. The door opened, and a short, dumpy man dressed in scrubs waddled in. He stood next to the gurney, leering at her naked body. His eyes swept the room before he reached out and groped her, touching her in places she didn't want to be touched, at least not by him. She squirmed, trying in vain to shake his hands off her naked body. The fat creep roared with laughter. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Get your hands off her!" A commanding voice stopped the slob's probing hands before he could touch her again. He took a step back, keeping his eyes locked on her nude body. She never wanted to kill someone before. "Get out of here now! I better not see you do this ever again!" Fatso's eyes moved away from her, toward the voice. It belonged to an older man with glasses, wearing a white lab coat with a stethoscope draped over his neck. He stood a foot taller than the molester, with a slim build. Not a muscular man like Ulysses, but commanding in his presence. "I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you. Only female assistants should help female patients. Please don't panic as I remove your bonds." He covered her naked body with a white robe before unlocking the cuffs holding her arms and legs to the table. She rubbed her wrists, noting the angry red grooves cutting into them. Brain fog kept her from forming coherent thoughts. "Be careful when you sit up. They don't adjust the dose of anesthesia by weight, and I'm sure you got way too much. That's why you've been out so long." The memories of the ride in the back of the truck with Ulysses, along with the strange smell before blacking out, came roaring back. Raw anger caused her to sit up quickly, making the room spin. She collapsed onto the gurney, banging her head on the table. Her movements exposed her breasts. He reached down, pulling the robe up to cover them. "That's why I told you to take it slow. Give yourself a minute, and then ease yourself up." Between her weakness and his condescending tone, her anger surged. She wanted to fight, but knew the time wasn't right. Sue needed shoes and clothing before plotting her escape. This time, she took his advice, pulling herself into a sitting position. Sue held onto the robe, protecting her modesty. Stupid, since the man had already seen everything. The doctor took a step back, giving her some room to get her bearings. "Good! Your color is returning to normal. I'm going to turn my back so you can put that robe on. Once you're ready, I'd like to check your vitals. If everything looks okay, then you can be on your way." He smiled before turning his back on her. A little late for modesty. She looked around the room for something to use as a weapon, finding nothing. Comply now, but keep looking for a way out. Anybody who kidnapped you, drugged you, and then stripped you wasn't your friend. "My name is Dr. Winchester. I'm the only surgeon and the head doctor in the colony. If you still feel unwell tomorrow, then please ask for me. I wish I could do more, but even our supplies have limits." The doctor spoke while checking her blood pressure, listening to her heart and lungs, and looking into her mouth and ears. He seemed like a kind man in this messed up place. "Where are we? Do you know what's going on?" Dr. Winchester stopped his exam, staring into her eyes. When Sue thought he might answer her questions, a knock on the door interrupted him. "Dr. Winchester, the major would like to see the prisoner." "I'm in the middle of an exam. I'll bring her by when I'm done." A short, obese man with a bald head had opened the door. The doctor looked up, pausing his exam, but his defiant look faded. "Sue, we can continue your exam later. You mustn't keep the major waiting." "Good choice, Doc. Come on with me, bitch." He grabbed her arm, dragging her off the exam table. Sue got her feet under her, maintaining her balance. Falling on her face after making it this far would be a serious disappointment. As they exited the building, she noticed the ring of buildings surrounding her. A hospital sign hung over the door of the one they exited. A 12-foot high fence, ringed with razor wire, separated them from the outside world. Men dressed in fatigues carrying assault rifles wandered the grounds. It looked like a prison. The fat man dragged her into one of the smaller buildings labeled with a hand-painted sign. It read, HQ. He threw the door open, pushing her through a door marked Private. Ulysses sat tied to a chair in the center of the room with the major standing over him. A crooked grin spread across his face when he saw her. He pulled his weapon from his holster, pointing it at her. Get on your knees. If you do this, Major, I'll kill you. Ulysses tugged at the bonds, but they held him tight. The major moved behind Sue, kicking her knee out from under her. He pushed the barrel of her pistol into the side of her head. Let's try this again, Captain. Are you going to help me, or are we going to see your friend's brains splattered across the room? Your choice. Ulysses stopped struggling. He stared into the eyes of the major. Okay, I'll help you. Let it go. Don't hurt Sue. He shoved Sue face first onto the floor, knocking the wind out of her. She laid still until she could breathe again. This promised haven had turned into a nightmare rather than a place of refuge. I'm going to kill you, Rudolph. Yes, I'm sure you'd like to. That's why I'm going to keep your friend as insurance, while you do my work. The fat bald man yanked Sue back onto her feet by her hair. Once she got upright, he bent her arm behind her back, shoving her toward the door. Lock her up until the captain is done with this mission. Nothing better happen to you or you're both dead. Yeah, we know. Make sure she's okay. They retraced their steps toward the building with the hospital sign. Instead of going upstairs as before, he dragged her down the cellar stairs. She struggled to see in the dim lighting. Several solid steel doors opened into the lone hallway. He stopped in front of the third door on the left, shoving her inside the 10-foot square room. A sense of dread grew within her as the door clanged shut. The harsh noise had a sound of finality to it. She wanted to cry, longing for the safety of the bunker. She sat by herself, wishing for someone to talk to. If she had committed a crime, she could accept being locked in a cell. But all she had done since the EMP attack was try to survive. Others committed unspeakable acts, but she ended up locked in a jail cell. What a cruel twist of fate. A knock on her door startled her. The door creaked open, allowing Dr. Winchester entry. I've come to finish your exam, Sue. What happened to your face? The concern in his voice at her fresh injuries gave her hope he might be an ally. He shook his head as he examined her bruised face. Sue started to speak, but the doctor stopped her by holding his finger in front of his lips. He took her by hand, leading her into the small bathroom. There he cranked the water on the sink and the shower to full on. From underneath his clipboard, he produced the child's blackboard. Producing a piece of chalk, he wrote, Camera, Mike. He pointed over his shoulder to a device that looked like a smoke detector in the main part of the room. Friend of Ulysses, the doctor wrote after erasing the first message. She debated with herself about this being a trick, a good cop to Major Johnson's bad cop. Be ready, tomorrow night. She puzzled at the brief message when he wrote no more. Instead, he washed the blackboard off in the running shower, erasing the message for good. He shut the water off, leading her back into the main room. You should be fine. Keep those injuries clean. I'll come back tomorrow. There's a strict curfew here in the colony, so lights will go out at 10 p.m. sharp. Dinner will come at 6. You'll find clean clothes in that dresser. Any questions? No, doctor. Thank you. He stood with his back to the camera, giving her a smile and a wink. Then the serious look reappeared on his face as he turned to leave. The thought of being trapped within these walls caused her stomach to flip. She wanted out now, but had to trust a stranger for her freedom. Still powerless, a feeling Sue had grown to hate.